Saturday night. Every lane is full. The bar has a line. A birthday party is taking over one corner. Kids are feeding cards into arcade machines. Pizza is moving out of the kitchen faster than the staff can cut it. From the parking lot, this place looks like a machine that prints money. Now, suppose we buy it. Not the idea of a bowling alley. This exact kind of business. Roughly 24 lanes, a large suburban building, food, a bar, an arcade, leagues, parties, corporate events, and a lot of mechanical equipment hidden behind the pins. The question changes immediately. A full room is not the same thing as a profitable business. The owner still has payroll, utilities, insurance, repairs, property costs, inventory, maintenance, and eventually major equipment that has to be replaced. And most of those bills do not disappear on a slow Tuesday afternoon. So instead of asking whether people still like bowling, we're going to ask a much harder question. If we owned this place for a year, what would actually be left for us? The first thing to understand is that a bowling lane is not really a product. It is inventory measured in time. If lane 12 sits empty from 2 to 3 on Tuesday afternoon, that hour is gone forever. We cannot put it in a warehouse and sell it on Saturday night. Hotels have the same problem with empty rooms. Airlines have it with empty seats. A bowling center has it with lane hours. And unlike a digital business, the building keeps costing money while that inventory expires. Public filings from Lucky Strike Entertainment describe location costs that include rent, utilities, insurance, repairs, maintenance, property taxes, supplies, and marketing. Some move with activity. Many do not move very much at all. That means the owner's real problem is not simply how much to charge for a game. It is how much money this building can generate from every hour of capacity, especially the hours customers do not naturally want. Buying an existing bowling center is also very different from building a new entertainment complex from scratch. An existing center can come with the expensive parts already embedded in the real estate. Lanes, pinsetters, ball returns, scoring equipment, electrical infrastructure, a kitchen, a bar, parking, customer habits, leagues, and years of local operating history. Current asking prices show just how different these assets can be. During this research, an operating 24-lane center in Niles, Michigan, with restaurant, bar, and event uses, was marketed for roughly $1.7 million. A former 24-lane facility in Springfield, Ohio, was offered around $990,000. A 20-lane property in Chardon, Ohio, was also marketed around $1 million. Those are asking prices, not completed transactions, and they are not directly comparable. One may be a going concern. Another may be a building full of equipment that needs work. That difference is the entire acquisition problem. A cheap bowling alley can be a bargain, or it can be a building where the previous owner postponed every expensive repair you are about to inherit. The building matters more here than it does in many entertainment businesses. A bowling center needs length, width, parking, customer access, power, heating and cooling, and enough nearby demand to fill a large amount of space repeatedly. Once the lanes are installed, the business is extremely hard to move. If we own the property, capital is trapped in a specialized building. If we lease it, the lease becomes a permanent claim on the cash flow. Either way, weak demand does not make the footprint smaller. This is why a beautiful Saturday night can be misleading. The owner is not paying only for the square feet being used at 8 p.m. The owner is carrying the whole building at 2 p.m., 4 p.m., 6 p.m., and every other hour the doors are open. A bowling center can therefore have a demand problem even when its peak periods are completely sold out. The problem is not Saturday. The problem is everything around Saturday. That also changes how the owner should think about real estate. A normal retailer can sometimes shrink a store, relocate, or change the merchandise inside it. A bowling center is built around long, specialized pieces of floor and machinery. The lanes define the geometry of the property. Parking defines how many groups can arrive. The kitchen and bar need their own infrastructure. The mechanical area behind the lanes consumes space customers never directly pay to occupy. So every square foot has two questions attached to it. What does it cost us to carry, and what does it help us earn? The answer is not always obvious. A party room that looks empty most of the week can be valuable if it allows prepaid weekend packages. An arcade can earn revenue without consuming another lane hour. A larger kitchen can support higher guest spending, but it can also create payroll, equipment, and waste. The same square footage can be productive or expensive depending on how the operation uses it. This is why the real estate problem and the revenue problem are inseparable. There is no honest universal price for bowling. Current Lucky Strike pricing pages show materially different prices across markets such as Times Square, Ladera Ranch, and Feasterville. Some sessions are priced per person and per game. Other operators use hourly lane pricing, packages, league rates, or event pricing. That variation tells us something important. The value of a lane hour depends on where it is, when it is sold, who is buying it, and what else that customer purchases. But every lane still has a hard physical ceiling. During the same hour, the owner cannot sell the same lane to two unrelated groups. Once the primetime lane is occupied, raising revenue requires one of three things: charge more for that hour, fill more otherwise empty hours, or earn more from the people already in the building. That third option is where the business becomes much more interesting. Think about two identical lane hours. One is sold at a discount on a quiet weekday to a league team that returns every week and buys drinks. The other is sold at a premium on Saturday night to a casual group that may never return. Which one is worth more? There is no automatic answer. The Saturday group may produce more revenue in that single hour. The league group may produce lower yield but far more predictable utilization over a season. And if the league occupies a time slot that would otherwise be empty, its lower price can still create more economic value. This is why revenue per occupied lane hour is more useful than simply quoting the price of bowling. And even that is incomplete, because two groups paying the same lane price can have completely different food, beverage, shoe, arcade, and event spending. The lane is only the first transaction. Lucky Strike is not our independent center model. It is a large public company with scale, centralized systems, acquisitions, corporate overhead, and a very different capital structure. But its filings give us something unusually useful: a verified look at what a modern bowling and entertainment operator actually sells. In fiscal 2025, Lucky Strike reported about $1.2 billion of revenue. Roughly $550 million came from bowling. About $424 million came from food and beverage, and about $227 million came from amusement and other revenue. In percentage terms, that is roughly 46% bowling, 35% food and beverage, and 19% amusement and other. That does not mean our local center should copy that mix. It does destroy one bad mental model. The lanes are not the whole business. They are the anchor that creates a visit. Once a group walks through the door, shoe rental can add revenue to the same game. A bar can monetize the same 2 hours. Food can monetize the same table. An arcade can monetize children before, during, or after bowling. An event package can bundle all of them into one transaction. And there is another distinction that matters. Lucky Strike reported about $94.6 million of food and beverage cost against about $424.2 million of food and beverage revenue. So the product cost itself was only a fraction of the sales price. But that is not the same thing as saying food and drinks are almost pure profit. The bartender still exists. The kitchen staff still exists. The building, utilities, licenses, insurance, cleaning, equipment, and management still exist. Gross margin answers, what is left after the thing we sold? Owner profit asks, what is left after the business required to sell it? Those are not the same question. Shoes are the simplest example of attached revenue. The center already brought the customer into the building for bowling. Rental shoes add another transaction to the same visit without using another lane. The amount is not necessarily transformative, but the mechanism matters. Once the customer is inside, the owner can increase spend without increasing the number of lanes. The bar takes that mechanism much further. Alcohol can have attractive product economics, but it also changes the risk profile of the business. Now the operator is not merely running an entertainment venue, the operator is also running a regulated hospitality operation with staffing, controls, insurance, and liability. The relevant question is not whether a drink has a large markup. It is whether the bar generates enough incremental contribution after all the people and overhead required to run it. Food has the same tension. A simple concession counter is one business. A full kitchen is another. A broader menu can keep groups in the building longer, support parties, increase average spend, and make corporate events more valuable. But every improvement in hospitality can create another layer of labor, refrigeration, prep, cleaning, inventory, and equipment. The arcade is different again. An arcade can monetize a customer before a lane is ready or after bowling ends. It can also use floor area that would not make sense for another lane. But machines cost money, require maintenance, and eventually become less interesting to customers. The owner can buy and operate the machines or share revenue with a third party. Those are different capital models. So when someone says the real money is in the bar or the real money is in the arcade, the statement is too simple. The real money is in contribution from the entire visit. Bowling creates the traffic. Every other department competes to turn that traffic into more revenue without creating even more cost than it adds. Now we can see why different customer types matter. Lucky Strike describes retail walk-ins as its largest audience, but it also describes league bowlers as a large, stable source of recurring revenue, and group events as consistent business with room to grow. Those customers solve different problems. A casual group on Saturday night may tolerate the highest price. Great, but Saturday night was already the easy part. A league can put recurring customers into weekday lanes on a predictable schedule. A birthday party can package bowling, shoes, food, drinks, and arcade spending into a reserved block of time. A corporate group can turn a quiet weekday afternoon into paid capacity. The best customer is therefore not always the customer with the highest visible ticket price. Sometimes the most valuable customer is the one who pays for an hour that would otherwise earn zero. That is the core economic idea behind leagues and events. $1 of Saturday night revenue may displace another customer who is willing to buy the same lane. $1 of Tuesday afternoon revenue may be almost entirely incremental to capacity that was going to expire unused. This is why the operator is really managing a calendar. Birthday parties are a particularly good illustration because they bundle several revenue streams into one reservation. A parent is not necessarily shopping for the cheapest possible lane hour. The parent is buying a predictable event. Lanes, shoes, food, drinks, arcade credits, a party area, and staff attention can all be packaged into one decision. For the operator, that can convert a period of uncertain walk-in demand into prepaid capacity. Corporate events solve a similar problem at a different time of the week. An office team may want a weekday afternoon, catering, reserved lanes, a private area, and a bar package. If the alternative for those lanes was near zero demand, the event can be economically valuable, even if the operator has to schedule extra labor for it. Leagues solve the utilization problem differently. They trade some flexibility and sometimes some price upside for repetition. The same customers return on a schedule. That regularity has value because fixed costs are easiest to carry when at least part of the demand is predictable. So the owner is constantly choosing among three kinds of yield: high price peak demand, recurring scheduled demand, and incremental off-peak demand. A healthy calendar can contain all three. The mistake is assuming one category should dominate every hour. Organized bowling is still large, but it is not the entire bowling market. USBC currently reports more than 1.07 million members, more than 29,000 certified leagues, more than 3,400 certified centers, and more than 78,000 certified lanes. The important point for this film is not to build a dramatic story about why league bowling changed. It is simply that modern operators cannot assume organized league demand will fill the whole building by itself. The public company evidence points to a blended model: walk-ins, leagues, birthdays, corporate events, food, drinks, and amusement, all living inside the same property. The business did not stop being bowling. It became a much broader attempt to monetize social time around bowling. Then we walk behind the pins. This is the part customers rarely price into the ticket. A bowling center is a hospitality business with specialized machinery attached to every lane. The equipment has to reset pins, return balls, communicate with scoring systems, and keep operating through the hours when demand is most valuable. Lucky Strike says a typical location includes a general manager, 2 operations managers, a facilities manager, and roughly 20 to 30 associates across food and beverage, customer service, and maintenance. Again, that is a chain benchmark, not our staffing plan. But it shows the range of functions hiding inside what looks like a simple recreational venue. A broken machine at noon on Tuesday is inconvenient. A broken machine at 8 on Saturday destroys an hour of inventory the owner may never recover. Maintenance is therefore not just a repair expense, it is revenue protection. And old equipment creates a particularly uncomfortable trade-off. Keeping it alive may require more attention and specialized knowledge. Replacing it may require a large capital check. Either way, the owner pays. This is also why deferred maintenance is so dangerous in an acquisition. A seller can show us last year's revenue. That number is visible. What may be less visible is the age of the HVAC, the condition of the scoring system, the history of lane work, the spare parts situation, or the amount of knowledge sitting inside one veteran mechanic's head. If we buy a center cheaply and then discover that several systems need major replacement, the true purchase price was never the number on the closing statement. The true purchase price was the closing statement plus the capital we inherited. That is why the difference between normal repair and replacement capital matters so much. Belts, sensors, pins, routine servicing, and minor repairs belong to the ordinary operating life of the center. A new scoring system, major HVAC work, lane replacement, a kitchen rebuild, or a full pinsetter conversion can require a different scale of cash. If the owner spends every dollar of operating profit, the business can look healthy right up until the year an expensive system fails. That trade-off is one reason string pinsetters matter. USBC now permits approved string pinsetters as a distinct certified equipment category and has published research on how approved systems perform. For an owner, that makes the question legitimate. It is no longer simply, will sanctioned bowlers accept this equipment? The financial question is, what does conversion cost? What operating expense does it actually remove? How does it affect downtime? And how long does the investment take to pay back? There are dramatic marketing claims about savings in this area. We are not going to use them as facts. Without verified operator evidence, the correct conclusion is narrower. String systems create a new capital allocation choice. They do not automatically create a good return. The irony of the modern model is that every extra revenue stream also creates another operating system. Add a bar, and now we have bartenders, beverage inventory, age controls, licensing, cleaning, and liability. Add a serious kitchen, and now we have cooks, food safety, refrigeration, waste, prep, and equipment maintenance. Add an arcade, and now there are machines, payment systems, prizes, repairs, and floor space. Add events, and now someone has to sell, schedule, prepare, host, and reset those events. Lucky Strike's fiscal 2025 numbers make the labor burden visible. Payroll and benefits were about $284 million, roughly 24% of total revenue. Location operating costs were another roughly $376 million. Those are not percentages we should simply paste onto one independent alley, but they confirm the direction of the economics. Revenue per guest can rise because the business becomes more complex. The operator's job is to make sure the extra contribution from that complexity is greater than the labor and overhead required to support it. Labor is especially tricky because it is neither perfectly fixed nor perfectly variable. A slow afternoon may allow a smaller crew, but the center still needs enough people to open safely, serve customers, maintain equipment, run food and beverage, and manage the property. On a busy night, labor grows. On a dead night, it does not fall to zero. Utilities behave similarly. A large building still has to be heated or cooled. Refrigeration keeps running. Lights, scoring systems, kitchen equipment, and other electronics continue consuming power. Some electricity rises with activity, but a meaningful base load exists because the building exists. That means the center has a minimum economic weight before the first profitable customer walks in. The owner does not win by cutting every cost to the bone. Understaff the bar and customers wait. Under-maintain the machines and lanes go down. Stop refreshing the venue and the experience becomes less competitive. The better question is whether each fixed or semi-fixed cost protects enough revenue to justify itself. There is one more lesson in the public company data. Scale does not eliminate volatility. Lucky Strike's fiscal 2025 same-store revenue declined about 3.7%. In the same filing, the company describes many location costs as fixed or only partly variable. That is operating leverage in plain English. When sales fall a little, profit can fall a lot because the building does not shrink with revenue, and capital spending never disappears completely. For the 9 months ended in March 2026, Lucky Strike reported about $90 million of capital expenditures across the company. We should not divide that number by the number of locations and call it a maintenance budget. It includes a mix of investments across a large chain, but it makes one principle impossible to ignore. A bowling center is not an asset you buy once and then harvest forever. The physical experience has to be maintained, repaired, and periodically refreshed. Any owner model that ignores that future cash requirement is flattering itself. So now we can finally buy our hypothetical center. Not a national average, not a claim about what every bowling alley earns. One explicit model. In this model, the center produces $2 million of annual revenue, but the owner does not keep $2 million. Food, beverage, and other direct costs take the first piece. Payroll takes another major piece. The building and the operating system around it take another. Then we reserve money for the owner to actually work in the business at a market value, because pretending the owner's labor is free makes almost any small business look better. And then we reserve real cash for maintenance and replacement capital. After all of that, our modeled owner cash flow is about $300,000 before tax on roughly $2 million of invested capital. That is a 15% unlevered cash return in this specific model, plus the owner's $100,000 compensation for doing an operating job. Is that good? Maybe. A 15% modeled return can look attractive next to a lower-yielding passive asset, but this is not passive. The capital is concentrated in one highly specialized property. The operator is exposed to local demand, competition, equipment failures, labor problems, food execution, liquor compliance, and the possibility that a large future renovation arrives earlier than expected. And our model assumes an all-cash acquisition. If the owner uses debt, the return on equity can rise when things go well, but debt service also takes cash out of the business before the owner gets paid. Leverage does not fix a weak center. It amplifies the outcome of the center underneath it. The other reason to be careful is that our $300,000 is already after a maintenance capital reserve. That reserve is not an accounting decoration. It is cash we are deliberately refusing to treat as spendable because physical assets wear out. An owner who removes that reserve could claim a higher profit this year. The business would not actually be richer. It would simply be borrowing from its own future. But now, the real test begins, because even our more conservative number is fragile. This is where the full parking lot becomes dangerous. In our weak case, revenue falls only 10%. Owner cash flow falls by much more than 10%. Nothing mysterious happened. The building was still there. Management was still there. Insurance was still there. Utilities were still there. Maintenance still existed. A large part of payroll still had to be scheduled. The revenue moved faster than the cost base. Now, reverse it. If the same center can add revenue during weak periods without adding another building, another 24 lanes, or a proportional amount of fixed overhead, the extra revenue can have an outsized effect on owner cash flow. That is why a corporate event on Wednesday afternoon can matter so much. It is not just another sale. It is a sale against capacity we already paid to own. Now consider where that extra 10% of revenue comes from. If it comes entirely from Saturday nights that were already full, the center may need higher prices or faster turnover. There is a ceiling. If it comes from Wednesday corporate events, Sunday birthday packages, better food attachment, or more league participation during underused hours, the building may absorb much of that revenue with less incremental capital. That is the difference between growth and productive utilization. A bowling center can grow revenue by building more lanes, but that requires more capital. Or it can grow revenue by making the existing lanes, kitchen, bar, arcade, and event space work harder during hours that are already being paid for. The second kind of growth is often the more interesting owner story because it improves the return on assets already in place. And the weak case teaches the opposite lesson. If recurring demand disappears, if events are poorly sold, or if the customer spends less once inside, the owner cannot simply switch off half the building until business improves. The cost base waits for revenue to come back. Our model also gives us a useful way to think about break-even. 24 lanes, 12 sellable hours per day, 360 days per year gives us just over 103,000 available lane hours. Of course, the bar and arcade do not literally run on lane hours. That is the point. Lane hours give us the capacity skeleton. Total guest spending determines whether that skeleton can support the building. A center with low lane utilization needs extraordinary ancillary spending to compensate. A center with good utilization but weak food, beverage, and event spending may be leaving too little revenue around each visit. The operator is balancing both. Now go back to Saturday night. The lanes are full. The bar is busy. The arcade is loud. The parking lot has almost no empty spaces. At the beginning, that looked like proof. Now it looks like one data point. The real business is what happens across the whole week. Can the operator buy the physical asset at a sensible price? Can the center fill enough weak lane hours? Can it sell food, drinks, events, and amusement without adding more complexity than contribution? Can it keep machines operating when the hours are most valuable? Can it absorb reinvestment without pretending every dollar of operating profit belongs to the owner? And can it do all of that without paying so much for the building that even a successful operation produces a mediocre return on capital? There is also a strategic risk hidden in the building itself. The customer is not choosing only between one bowling center and another bowling center. The customer is deciding what to do with 2 or 3 hours of leisure time. Bowling competes with restaurants, cinemas, golf entertainment, arcades, escape rooms, trampoline parks, home gaming, and whatever new format opens nearby. That competition explains why operators keep adding experience. But experience requires capital. So the center lives inside a loop. Invest enough to stay relevant, but not so much that the return on the investment disappears. That is the answer to whether a bowling alley is a good business. It can be, but not because bowling is secretly high margin, and not because the bar is a magic profit center, and not because the parking lot is full. A bowling center works when the owner controls the capital basis, protects the fixed cost structure, monetizes empty time, raises spending per visit, and keeps enough cash after maintenance and reinvestment to justify the money trapped in the building. The lanes are the reason people arrive. The business is everything that happens to their time after they walk through the door.